This book only appears right before a life-changing breakthrough, and if you're hearing it now, that is no accident. As you listen, you'll uncover the truth. The hardest stretch you've been living through isn't a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're close. Your breakthrough has already begun. Nothing about finding this book, in this exact hour, was accidental. Certain teachings have a curious way of appearing in a person's life only in the final stretch before a breakthrough, never a moment before that person was truly ready to receive them, and never a moment after they needed them most. If you are hearing these words tonight, it is worth taking seriously the possibility that this is precisely such a moment, rather than dismissing it as mere coincidence. There is a pattern lived through by so many, across so many different lives, that it deserves to be named plainly. The hardest, most discouraging stretch of any journey tends to arrive not because failure is near, but precisely because success has never been closer than it is in that very moment. This final difficulty is so often mistaken for defeat, when in truth it should be recognized for what it actually is: proximity. The last narrow passage before the wide and open room beyond it. Consider why this particular stretch feels so heavy. The mind and circumstance alike tend to resist most strongly in the moment just before they finally yield completely, much as the deepest and coldest darkness of the entire night falls, reliably and without exception, in the hour just before dawn breaks. This is simply the shape breakthrough has always taken, in every life that has genuinely experienced one. What follows is offered as a companion for this exact threshold moment, for this final and often most difficult stretch, when the temptation to give up grows strongest precisely because the goal has never been nearer. You will be shown how to recognize the signs already appearing in your own life, quietly and easily dismissed until now. You will be shown how to release the anxious grip of impatience that so often delays the very arrival it hopes to hasten. And you will be shown how to cross fully into the breakthrough already quietly underway within you. Consider, with open attention, that this book appearing in your life now is itself the first sign worth taking seriously. Not proof, not yet, but a sign, offered quietly, the way all true signs are first offered before they are recognized as what they are. The deeper instruction of Part 1 awaits you now. Act 1. The sign you almost missed. Chapter 1. Nothing appears by accident. Everett Callaway worked as a young surveyor, walking long and often disappointing days across land that never seemed to yield the opportunities he once dreamed of. One evening, having quietly resolved only hours before to abandon a long-held dream he had carried since boyhood, he was approached by a stranger outside a small tavern who pressed an old, worn book into his hands and walked on without a word. Everett nearly discarded it unread, keeping it instead, almost by accident, tucked in a drawer for months before finally opening it one restless night. Only years later, looking back across an entirely transformed life, did he recognize that evening, the very evening he had resolved to give up, as the precise turning point of everything that followed. Certain resources, certain teachings, certain encounters arrive not randomly but at the exact threshold moment a person is ready to receive them. This book finding you now, in this particular hour, is worth taking seriously as such a moment rather than dismissed as coincidence. Millicent Rowe received this very same book years earlier and set it aside unread, distracted by matters that seemed, at the time, more urgent. She encountered it again much later, at a moment she finally recognized as significant, wondering what might have unfolded had she recognized its arrival the first time. Consider the specific circumstances that led you to this exact book, at this exact moment, and take that arrival seriously. Practice. Tonight, reflect on the specific circumstances that led you to begin this book now, and what that timing might be quietly indicating. Chapter 2. The Quiet Before the Turn. Harold Bixby, a clockmaker, noticed across many years that the stillest hour of the night just before the first grey light of dawn. He was also the coldest and quietest, and came to see this pattern as a fitting reflection of a similar stillness he had felt in his own life just before each major turning point. A breakthrough is almost always preceded by a period of stillness that feels, at first, indistinguishable from stagnation. Learning to recognize this quality of quiet as preparation rather than defeat is essential to moving through it well. Adelia Fenstermacher mistook a season of unusual quiet for a sign that nothing was happening at all, and nearly abandoned her efforts entirely before the breakthrough she had been quietly approaching finally arrived, only weeks after her darkest evening. Consider whether your own current stillness might be this same quiet before a turn, rather than a sign of stagnation. Practice. Tonight, consider your current season through this new lens of quiet preparation rather than stagnation. Chapter 3. Why the Struggle Always Comes Last. Delbert Cranshaw, a young farmer, noticed that the final weeks before harvest were always the most demanding of the entire season, requiring more labor than any earlier stretch, and began to wonder whether this same pattern held true elsewhere in life. The hardest stretch of any journey tends to arrive not because of failure, but precisely because of proximity to completion, much as the final push of any undertaking asks the most of those nearing its end. Winifred Alcott interpreted a particularly difficult stretch as proof her efforts had failed, and nearly gave up entirely just weeks before the breakthrough she had been working toward finally arrived. Reconsider any current difficulty not as a sign of failure, but as a possible indication of nearness. Practice. Tonight, reframe one current struggle as a possible sign of proximity rather than failure. Chapter 4. Reading the Signs You've Been Given. Otis Ravenscroft, upon reflection, realized that several small occurrences over recent months, a chance conversation, an unexpected opportunity, a persistent thought had quietly been preparing him for the very breakthrough now approaching, though he had dismissed each individually as unremarkable. Small, easily dismissed signs have very likely already been appearing in your own life, quietly preparing you for this present moment. Clementine Ruggles dismissed each small sign as unimportant and only recognized their significance much later, wishing she had paid closer attention. Consider recent small occurrences that may, in retrospect, have been preparing you. Practice. Tonight, identify 2 or 3 small signs from recent months that may have been preparing you. Chapter 5. The breakthrough was never random. Ambrose Tillotson's sudden, celebrated success was attributed by outsiders to pure luck, though he alone knew the many quiet years of unseen preparation that led directly to it. What appears from the outside as sudden breakthrough is, in nearly every case, the visible result of long invisible preparation that simply was not seen by others. Prudence Hatchett watched a friend's apparently sudden success with quiet envy, never suspecting the years of unseen effort behind it, and came to see her own current unseen effort in a more patient light. Consider your own invisible preparation that may already be building toward a visible breakthrough. Practice. Tonight, acknowledge one piece of unseen preparation you have already been quietly doing. Chapter 6. Why you and why now? Silas Prentice wondered why such a difficult turning point should arrive in his life at this particular time, only to recognize later that something within him had been readying itself for exactly this moment. You were not chosen at random. Something within you, some quiet readiness built through accumulated experience, has brought you precisely here, precisely now. Henrietta Poole questioned why her breakthrough seemed to arrive later than expected, only to recognize she had not truly been ready for it until this exact moment. Consider what quiet readiness within yourself may explain why now is your moment. Practice. Tonight, reflect on what has changed within you that may explain why this moment is yours. Chapter 7. The Final Test Before the Turn. Cyrus Applewhite faced his single greatest professional challenge the very week before the opportunity that would define his career, and came to see this test as the final proof of readiness required. The moment just before breakthrough often brings its greatest test, one designed to prove what has truly been internalized rather than merely understood. Beulah Sims nearly abandoned her effort in the face of an unusually difficult final test, not recognizing it as the proof her breakthrough required. Consider whether any current difficulty might be this same kind of final test. Practice. Tonight, consider what a current difficulty might be quietly proving about your own readiness. Chapter 8. Releasing the Grip of Almost. Roscoe Dunleavy spent his final weeks before a long-awaited opportunity gripped by anxious anticipation, checking constantly for signs of its arrival, and noticed this grip made the waiting feel longer and more strained. Holding too tightly to how close a breakthrough feels can itself introduce resistance, much as gripping any object too tightly makes it harder to hold steady. Mercy Whitcomb released her anxious grip and settled into calm trust, finding her final waiting passing with far greater ease. Consider whether you have been gripping tightly to how close you feel your breakthrough to be. Practice. Tonight, practice a brief releasing exercise, consciously loosening your grip on anxious anticipation. Chapter 9. The Belief that Seals the Sign. Jedediah Marsh received a clear sign pointing toward his approaching breakthrough, yet dismissed it as coincidence, only to recognize later that his dismissal had delayed his full acceptance. Recognizing a genuine sign as meaningful, rather than dismissing it, is itself what allows the breakthrough it points toward to fully arrive. Arabella Stanhope received a similar sign and chose to accept it fully, finding her breakthrough arriving with noticeably greater ease. Consider a recent sign you may have too quickly dismissed. Practice. Tonight, consciously accept one recent sign as genuinely meaningful. Chapter 10. Crossing the Threshold. Elias Woodruff, after months of preparation, finally accepted inwardly, in a single deliberate moment, that his breakthrough had already begun well before outward evidence confirmed it, and noticed a settled shift within himself the instant he made this acceptance. The breakthrough truly begins the instant a person accepts inwardly that it has already begun, for this inward acceptance is itself the true crossing of the threshold. Homer Castellan continued waiting for outward proof before allowing himself inward acceptance, and so remained standing at a threshold he had not truly crossed. Recognize that you now stand at this same threshold. Practice. To close this first part of your journey, make a deliberate moment of inwardly accepting that your breakthrough has already begun. Act 2. The Sacred Practices Before the Breakthrough. Chapter 11. The Stillness That Prepares You. Homer Fairweather began setting aside a brief period of true stillness each day, and noticed it left him steadily more prepared and receptive for whatever unfolded. A brief, daily stillness readies the mind to notice what is already on its way, clearing away noise that might otherwise cause signs to go unnoticed. Vera Applegate filled every quiet moment with restless activity, leaving herself no stillness in which to notice the signs already appearing. Consider how much genuine stillness you currently allow yourself. Practice. Today, practice a brief stillness exercise. Chapter 12. Speaking to the Breakthrough Already Near. Augustus Hartwell began addressing his approaching breakthrough directly each evening, speaking to it as already close, and noticed a shift in his own sense of expectancy. Addressing one's breakthrough as already near, rather than distant, quietly hastens its arrival, for language shapes inner expectancy. Percival Dodd continued speaking of his breakthrough as distant, and found his patience weakening. Consider how you have been speaking about your own approaching breakthrough. Practice. Tonight, speak to your own breakthrough as already near. Chapter 13. Releasing the Old Story of Struggle. Josephine Carter realized she had continued telling the old story of hardship long after it ceased to describe her circumstances, and began setting it down. The story of one's own hardship must be gently set down before a new story of breakthrough can begin, for continuing to narrate struggle keeps its energy alive. Elmer Griggs continued repeating his old story long after his circumstances had shifted, unknowingly delaying his transition. Consider whether you have been telling an old story that no longer reflects where you stand. Practice. Tonight, consciously set down one old story of struggle. Chapter 14. Feeling the shift before it shows. Delphine Hargrove noticed, weeks before any outward change, a distinct inward shift, a settledness she had not felt before. A felt sense of change, held before outward evidence confirms it, is often the truest sign a breakthrough is near. Cornelius Beadle dismissed his own similar shift, waiting for outward proof before trusting anything had changed. Consider whether you have noticed any inward shift recently. Practice. Tonight, identify any inward shift you may have already begun to feel. Chapter 15. The Nightly Practice of Readiness. Reginald Thorpe began closing each day with a brief practice of readiness, deepening his sense of calm expectancy over time. A brief nightly practice keeps one aligned and prepared for the breakthrough already approaching. Mabel Truscott neglected any such practice, remaining unprepared to recognize her breakthrough when it arrived. Consider the value of a consistent nightly practice of readiness. Practice. Tonight, practice a brief nightly readiness exercise. Chapter 16. Guarding against the final doubt. Wendell Ashcroft, in the final stretch, found himself gripped by doubt more intense than any before, and nearly abandoned his effort before recognizing it as a final test. Doubt often strikes with particular intensity in the last moments before breakthrough and must be met with special calm. Adelaide Crum met this same doubt with calm acknowledgement, continuing steadily, and found her breakthrough arriving shortly after. Expect this intensity of final doubt and meet it calmly. Practice. Tonight, practice a brief, calming technique for moments of intense final doubt. Chapter 17. The Ritual of the Ready Mind. Ezekiel Thistlewood assembled a brief, consistent ritual from the practices he had learned, keeping his mind consistently prepared. A short, consistent ritual transforms scattered readiness into a dependable, ongoing state. Henrietta Coswell practiced only sporadically and found her preparedness just as inconsistent. Consider assembling your own brief, consistent ritual. Practice. Tonight, assemble a short, personal ritual of readiness to repeat faithfully. Chapter 18. Visualizing the moment of arrival. Percival Hawthorne pictured, in vivid detail, the precise moment his breakthrough would arrive, feeling he might recognize it the instant it occurred. Picturing the exact moment of arrival strengthens one's readiness to fully receive it rather than let it pass unnoticed. Araminta Fenwick never pictured any specific moment and very nearly failed to recognize her own breakthrough when it finally came. Consider picturing your own moment of arrival more vividly. Practice. Tonight, visualize the exact moment your breakthrough finally arrives. Chapter 19. Gratitude for what is already near. Beatrice Longstreet began offering quiet thanks each night for a breakthrough not yet visible, speaking of it as already close. Giving thanks for a breakthrough not yet visible affirms trust that it has already begun, strengthening the expectancy that helps draw it into view. Reginald Applegate withheld gratitude until his breakthrough became visible, unknowingly weakening the trust that might have hastened it. Consider offering gratitude now for a breakthrough already near. Practice. Tonight, offer a brief gratitude exercise for the breakthrough already quietly near. Chapter 20. Waking each day closer. Clara Pennywhistle began greeting each morning with the quiet expectation that she was one day closer to her breakthrough. Each morning, greeted with quiet expectation, brings the reader visibly nearer, for this expectancy compounds over time. Wendell Ashgrove greeted each morning with flat uncertainty, never allowing his sense of nearness to grow. Consider how you typically greet each new morning. Practice. To close this second part of your journey, Greet tomorrow with the quiet expectation of standing one day closer. Act 3. Living the Breakthrough. Chapter 21. The First Unmistakable Sign. Silas Merriweather, after weeks of small signs, finally encountered one occurrence so clear it could no longer be attributed to coincidence, marking a turning point in his certainty. At some point, a sign appears that can no longer be dismissed as coincidence, marking a shift from anticipation into arrival. Ophelia Rundgren continued doubting even this unmistakable sign, delaying her full acceptance. Consider whether you have already encountered such a sign. Practice. Tonight, reflect on any recent sign that may already qualify as unmistakable, and consciously accept it. Chapter 22. Becoming someone the breakthrough recognizes. Horace Pemberley began carrying himself, well before proof arrived, as the person his breakthrough was meant for. A breakthrough arrives most easily for those who have already begun to carry themselves as changed, removing friction that might otherwise delay it. Prudence Alderman waited for her breakthrough to arrive before allowing herself to change, and found her transition proceeding with more friction. Consider one way you might begin carrying yourself now as already changed. Practice. Today, identify one small way to carry yourself as already changed. Chapter 23. When Old Fear Resists the New Chapter. Eugene Halloway, even as his breakthrough drew nearer, found an old fear rising again, seemingly determined to resist. Old fear may rise even as breakthrough nears, not as a sign of trouble, but as a final, natural resistance to be met calmly. Henrietta Coswell mistook this late resurgence as proof her breakthrough was in jeopardy, nearly undermining her own progress. Expect and calmly meet any old fear that resurfaces this close to breakthrough. Practice. Tonight, practice a brief calming exercise for moments when old fear resurfaces. Chapter 24. The Patience of the Final Stretch. Old shipwright Barnabas Coll understood that a vessel's final stage, though often shortest, requires the most careful attention. The last stretch before breakthrough often requires the deepest patience, precisely because the temptation to rush grows strongest here. Dorothea Linwood rushed carelessly through her final stretch and found her eventual breakthrough somewhat diminished by the haste. Consider bringing particular patience to this final stretch. Practice. Tonight, offer yourself a reminder, affirming patience specifically for this final stretch. Chapter 25. Guarding your breakthrough from doubtful company. Josephine Kavanagh noticed that sharing news of her approaching breakthrough with a skeptical acquaintance left her own confidence shaken afterward. The doubts of others can quietly unsettle a breakthrough already close at hand, and this final stretch deserves particular care in choosing whom to share it with. Bartholomew Rees shared freely with anyone who would listen, absorbing considerable doubt, and found his certainty weakening. Consider guarding your approaching breakthrough from unnecessary exposure to doubt. Practice. Tonight, identify one person or context you will avoid discussing your breakthrough with for now. Chapter 26. The breakthroughs ripple into every area. Frederick Lansing noticed unexpected improvements quietly appearing in unrelated areas of his life as his primary breakthrough drew nearer. A true breakthrough rarely stays contained to one area, but ripples outward as the underlying inner shift continues to spread. Agatha Winslow focused so narrowly that she nearly failed to notice the quiet improvements rippling into other parts of her life. Consider whether you have noticed unexpected improvements beyond your primary focus. Practice. Tonight, identify any unexpected ripple of improvement beyond your primary area of focus. Chapter 27. When the path bends unexpectedly. Aloysius Grant, near his anticipated breakthrough, encountered an unexpected turn that struck him as troubling, only to discover it was essential to the breakthrough's true shape. An unexpected turn near the end is often part of the breakthrough's true shape, deserving curious attention rather than alarm. Beatrice Noloth resisted an unexpected late turn so completely she nearly missed its essential role. Consider meeting any unexpected late turn with curiosity rather than alarm. Practice. Tonight, reflect on meeting any unexpected turn with calm curiosity. Chapter 28. Those who received their sign before you. Old harbor pilot Ezra Thornbury once received an old book at the exact threshold of his own life-changing turning point, crediting it for the rest of his life. Throughout history, others have received their own quiet sign just before their turning point, leaving faint traces for those who look closely. A young descendant, Charlotte Thornbury, discovered her ancestor's account and recognized its striking resemblance to her own present circumstances. Consider whether such a sign may have appeared unrecognized in your own history. Practice. Tonight, reflect briefly on one such sign from your own life or lineage. Chapter 29. Becoming a sign for someone else. Clementine Marsh, once her breakthrough had arrived, gently shared her experience with a struggling friend at precisely the moment that friend needed to hear it. Sharing one's own breakthrough may become the very sign another person is waiting for, just as this book may have arrived for you at your own moment of need. Ambrose Fenwick kept his breakthrough entirely private, and wondered later whether someone nearby might have benefited from hearing of it. Consider that your own eventual breakthrough may one day become someone else's sign. Practice. Identify one person with whom you might one day gently share your own breakthrough. Chapter 30. Beyond the Threshold. Aged Rutherford Blake found that the breakthrough that once seemed distant had simply become the natural shape of his ongoing life, no longer remembered as a single dramatic event. Once truly crossed, the breakthrough becomes the new and natural shape of one's life, settling into the ordinary rhythm of a changed existence. A young seeker, Wilhelmina Foss, asked him what it felt like when his breakthrough arrived, only to be told it no longer feels like anything at all, for it has simply become his life. Imagine your own future self, for whom this threshold will one day be remembered only as a quiet beginning. Practice. To close this third and final part of your journey, envision your life, years from now, with today's breakthrough having long since become simply your natural way of living. Epilogue. This book did not find you by accident, and the breakthrough it announced at the very beginning is no longer merely approaching, it has, by this point, already quietly begun. Consider the distance traveled, from the first uncertain recognition of a sign to this final, settled understanding of arrival. Your own inward acceptance has already set your breakthrough fully into motion, whether or not every outward detail has yet appeared. You need not keep watching anxiously for what has already begun. You may simply continue forward, carrying this breakthrough with you as the new and natural shape of the life now unfolding.